Since none of the officers at RAF Brackenham was prepared to confront the problem of Houghton's bullying, many of the men decided to take matters into their own hands by going absent without leave. Some of them with the help of the known CND activist, Graham Grindle.
A lot of them came to me for help. I let them stay here until their swellings went down. They usually had some. Then, when they were well enough to travel, I'd help them to disguise their appearances.
How?
By shaving off their moustaches. You could stuff a mattress with the amount of facial hair that's been down this plug hole over the years.
But the escape route offered by Graham Grindle, John Irwin decided, was not for him.
I hadn't anywhere to escape to, really. Avril and I were already well on the way to breaking up, and I couldn't go and stay at my sister's because she had 2 rock bands and a poet staying in the flat already. So I thought I'd better just stay put and stick it out.
Even though Flight Sergeant Houghton was giving you a particularly hard time of it.
Yes.
What was it he actually did to you?
He used to strap 2 hand grenades to the side of my head, blindfold me, and then make me count down backwards from 9,999.
Every night?
Every night.
Did he ever give you a reason for doing this?
Yes. He said it was because my testicles were not symmetrical.
By the night of Friday the 20th of November 1970, John Irwin had become a desperate man. Though many factors may have contributed to that desperation, by far the most important must have been the bullying activities of this man, Flight Sergeant Trevor Houghton. And on that night, November the 20th, 1970, John Irwin turned the tables on his tormentor. For 4.5 hours, he had Houghton stripped to his underwear, a fire bucket over his head, counting painstakingly down from 9,999. But worse was to come. For when Houghton reached 0 at approximately 5:30 on Saturday morning, John Irwin opened his hands and let the grenades fall. Major Calvin Heisinger, formerly of the US Air Force, remembers what happened next.
We all screamed, dived to the floor, and tried to pull our jackets over our heads. Except Houghton, of course. He couldn't see what happened, so he just stood there at attention. And then we waited. And nothing happened. The grenades didn't go off. They were duds, both of them. I couldn't believe it. For the first and only time ever, I was actually glad to be in England.
It had been as close as that. If the 2 grenades had exploded as they should have, a large part of East Anglia and everybody living in it would have been destroyed. And yet, incredibly, at the time, none of the local villagers were warned of the danger they were in.
Of course, I can understand that you would want to play up as much as you can this hypothetical danger that was supposed to exist. In point of fact, there was none.
There was none?
None at all.
Why then was the base evacuated?
Base was not evacuated. It was the weekend. People went home on leave.
Yes, but they all went home together, didn't they? At about 1 a.m. on Saturday morning. Some of them crying, some of them stealing cars to get away as fast as they could.
Obviously, the men stationed at RAF Brackenham at that time took their weekends extremely seriously.
Lord Muggleton, I also understand that a number of local hospitals were alerted and warned to prepare for the possible arrival of a large number of casualties.
Yes, well, when people are that keen to get away on holiday, accidents can happen, can't they?
Meanwhile, in London, according to the late Sir Hugo Minter's book, you were phoning the Met Office to find out which way the wind was blowing.
I only did that to settle one of those stupid office bets.
And upon hearing that it might veer towards London from the east, you immediately left and announced you were heading for a friend's cottage in Devon.
I'm afraid Minter's distorted the whole thing. That visit was purely the result of a prior arrangement.
Even though, again according to Sir Hugo Minter, when you arrived, your friend was in bed.
The prior arrangement we had made was that I should pop in at any time. As a minister, you have to get away when you can. In point of fact, my actions that night proved there was no danger.
Do they?
Well, of course. If there'd really been any serious danger, do you honestly think I should have shot off to spend the night in a cellar in Devon?
You slept in a cellar?
Yes, a very cramped cottage. Didn't want to wake my friend.
Immediately after the incident, John Irwin was dismissed from the RAF on the grounds that he had, quote, indulged in the unauthorized private use of a number of items of RAF equipment. When he had gone, the base's commander saw to it that life at RAF Brackenham rapidly returned to the normal routine of a frontline nuclear airbase. A brief internal inquiry was held, but no blame was apportioned to any serving RAF personnel. Flight Sergeant Houghton, thus exonerated, was free to continue with his program of initiative exercises, but only, as it turned out, for another 2 years. Then, one night, while on a camping expedition with 6 young recruits from Glasgow, he apparently decided to go rock climbing all alone, without a rope, and wearing only his underwear. At some time in the early hours of the morning, he apparently slipped and fell headfirst to his death. Not one of the recruits, it was established at a brief internal inquiry held afterwards, had heard a thing. 20 years on, John Irwin is once again back living in his native Willesden and working in a local chip shop. He never remarried, but he says he is content, especially when pursuing his favourite hobby of painting.
Oh, I'm all right now, definitely. I'm much happier working in the chip shop. The initiation rituals there aren't so bad. Most of them involve fish, which I don't really mind. I'd rather have a fish stuck to my ear than a hand grenade any day.
David Harper opens up his investigative file again next week at the later time of 10:40.